now, if you're Blake Bortles, you're down by 10. You have plenty of time. And an interception, and you're not down by 10 anymore. Andre Howe, his second interception of the day, and this one is a pick six.
Zell hit from behind, lost the football, covered by the Jets.
Tannehill hit on the release, and it's intercepted. Picked off by Preston Brown. A nightmare scenario for Miami. Gabbard from the gun here from the Bengals. Gabbard able to just get it off. It's picked off the deflection. Adam Jones.
Hello, and welcome everyone to the three-step flop.
Three-step flop.
Three-step flop. I'm your host, Gator Strand, and with me forever and always, my co-host, Tony DeWittel.
How are we doing out there, loyal fans?
Cricket? Nothing. We have none. Because this is the first podcast. This is the first one. This is our...
It's been talked about. It's been theorized about. The idea has been thrown around. And I got to say, back in front of this mic with somebody next to me is really, truly where I feel at home. As being out of the podcast game, at least the duo podcast game for quite a while now. R.I.P. Aaron Carnival.
He's dead.
He lived a good life.
He's dead to us.
It feels good to have somebody to acknowledge me when I'm talking on the mic.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, it's not really a testament to your abilities or like helpfulness. It's more just that it's not just me talking in a room by myself. I will say
the best of them, Tony.
I know you can. That's why you're my friend. So I'm happy about that.
That's great. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're all here. But today, we're here to talk about football, and specifically, we're here to talk about bad football.
Yes, indeed. The best football, one might say, is bad football, and specifically bad quarterback play. Wouldn't you agree, Gary?
Exactly. It's what we've all come to know and love. This is the third season of our bad quarterback league, and now we want to document it verbally.
Yes.
We want to let you all know.
As a league that has very quickly become my favorite fantasy league. I would love to talk about it any opportunity I get, and this podcast allows me to do that. So I hope that you all enjoy this podcast as much as we enjoy putting it together for you.
So Tony, for anyone who may have accidentally clicked on listen to this podcast, who does not know what we're talking about, who does not know what the bad quarterback league is, could you explain how we run this league?
Absolutely. So this league works similarly to, if you're familiar with daily fantasy, it works a little bit like that. Every week you pick a new player. We have a roster size of one, and that is a quarterback. The goal of this league is to pick the quarterback who you believe is going to have the worst game for his team. Since our scoring system is impeccable, the quarterback who has the statistically the worst game of the week is going to be the person who is triumphant that week. Your point total is added every week, and the person with the highest point total at the end of the year wins the trophy. It just so happens that was me last year, so I'm back to defend my title. But if you want to get really specific, a couple of the scoring changes that are different from this league.
Before we go on, it was me year one. We're talking to the two champs.
Well, I subscribe to the theory of what have you done for me lately.
Okay.
And I feel as though 2014, I think, is a distant past right now. I think 2015 is very much in the rear view. It's certainly behind us, but we haven't lapped it.
I wasn't trying to shit on you.
It felt a little bit like you were
all
trying
I'm trying
to
to
shit
say is that everyone listening to this podcast has yet to win a bad quarterback league, and the two people who know it the best are here.
That's a good
it.
point. I apologize for coming at you.
Thank you. Jumped on me quick.
Yeah.
You jumped on me quick.
You're right, and I apologize because I think that just proves that we're the two most qualified people to be sitting here right now.
Church and preach.
And with that, some of our scoring changes, some of the things that we look for every Sunday, in addition to my other fantasy leagues, I play in a lot of fantasy leagues. In addition to those leagues, I'm obviously cheering for my players, but in this league specifically, you're cheering for bad play. So when I draft a terrible quarterback, like a favorite last year being Johnny Manziel, who unfortunately is not on a team this year, unfortunately for this league.
Unfortunate for this league.
Yeah,
very, very
he's not on a
so.
team this year. Unfortunately for all of his potential teammates.
Right.
We're cheering for. We're looking for him to do poorly. So that would be things like throwing a touchdown would be something that's bad. That's going to get you negative points in this league. Getting sacked, that's good though. You want your quarterback to get sacked.
True.
As far as
Hoping
points
for a
go.
fumble as well.
Yeah, sacks are going to get you 2 points. Fumbles are also going to get you 2 points. The best part about that is not only will a fumble get you 2 points, but a lost fumble will get you an additional 2 points. So not only do we want a fumble, but we want a fumble that just really, really fucks shit up.
So a sack, lost, fumble, that's 6 points, right?
A sack, lost, fumble is the same amount of points that you would get for an interception, which is also 6.
All right.
So interceptions are going to be your main goal. You're going to want a quarterback who's going to be throwing a lot of picks. You're also going to want a quarterback who's going to be throwing a lot of incomplete passes, because every single incomplete pass is going to net you 1 point. So on the other side of the coin, what you don't want is spectacular plays from your quarterback. You don't want 40-yard completions. You don't want 40-yard touchdowns or 40-yard runs or 40-yard rushing touchdowns, because those are all going to get you negative points. And as in almost every sport except for golf, negative points is usually a bad thing.
True. So now that we've got all those points wrapped up, let's get into the meat of the podcast here. The meat.
The main course.
The Subway meat of this podcast.
Yes, sir.
Because we're a bad quarterback league. We're talking about bad meat. All right.
Damn right.
Let's talk about some of our predictions for the year. But you know what? I guess first let's start with some new quarterbacks, the newbies, the rookies.
Sure. So there are 6 teams who are going to be starting quarterbacks that they did not start last year. So we'll start with the Cowboys, since they're probably the team that was they were probably the team that was projected to do the best out of all the teams with new quarterbacks.
Most surprising new quarterback.
Exactly, yeah. So Tony Romo, of course, as we all know, went down with a back injury in preseason.
It did not look good.
It didn't look good at all. And if you know much about football, Tony Romo's had multiple operations on his back. He got tackled, and it was almost as if somebody had hit him with a grenade directly into his spine.
They tried to make him a slinky.
Yeah, exactly. It was really brutal. He looked like he was in a lot of pain. To be quite honest with you, I'm not sure when he's coming back. The reports I've seen have said sometime in November, but you know that it could get worse.
No way. He's hurt.
It's never better. They never say, well, he's out 8 weeks and he comes back in week 5. That doesn't happen. So the Cowboys are going to be running with Kellen Moore for at least the first half of the season, if not more.
What about Drac, or what's his name?
Who?
Starts with a D. Anderson or something? Hold on.
Anderson.
No.
See,
so let us clarify.
remember
one
when
thing.
I was talking about people being qualified to host this podcast?
One thing, Dak Prescott. That's who I was talking about.
Oh, Prescott. Okay, I believe he's the 3rd string.
Okay.
Kellen Moore. I think the reason why they went with Moore is because he has more experience. I don't think Prescott has any NFL starts under his belt, but Kellen Moore has been in the NFL for 3 or 4 years now. He's shown that he's, I guess, competent would be a strong word. He can hand the ball off, and he'll try to protect the ball as well as he can, but he's no Tony Romo.
So one thing we didn't clarify for those of you who don't know me, I know very little about the NFL, about football in general. I know the rules, I know how to play, but I don't follow football as well as I wish I did. And Tony is quite the opposite. Tony knows football very well. So you're looking at a beautiful balance here, beautiful balanced sub.
And what's even better about that is the fact that we have a lot of difference in the amount of knowledge football wise, but we've both won the league. So one of the gorgeous and beautiful things about this league, and really in fantasy football in general, is you don't have to necessarily know much about football to be good at it. And this league, I think, especially. That being said, don't let that fool you. I put a lot of time and effort into my picks, a lot of analysis, and these are all things you're not going to hear on the pod, unfortunately. Maybe if you subscribe to the premium podcast, I can give you some of my tips and tricks, but I'm not giving that away for free. So
I will, because I don't know what I'm talking
Gator
about.
happy to give away his tips and tricks. So Kellen Moore. I'm sorry.
Which I'm not seeing this guy on any of the little bit of research that I've done. I don't see him on my list. I don't see him as a top ranked quarterback.
Well,
I see Dak Prescott on the list, but I don't see Kellen Moore.
Good Lord, this is being derailed quite quickly because as far as I know, Kellen Moore is going to be the starter.
This is our first segment called debate the quarterback. I don't.
This is something that we probably should have clarified before the podcast. Gator, I think, is probably just throwing something my way that's incorrect.
Probably.
Because I think that a lot of us know now that obviously I'm not trying to stall to pull up the depth chart for the Broncos right now. But according to the Broncos depth chart, which I had up the entire time, Kellen Moore is the starter.
Broncos.
According to the Cowboys depth chart, which I've had up the whole time,
Okay.
Kellen Moore is going to be the starter.
Okay.
Dak Prescott is behind him. So
Gotcha.
Dak Prescott, I believe, is a second year, or he's a rookie from
Okay.
Mississippi State. Kellen Moore is this is his fourth year. So he's been around. He's been a backup for most of his career. He got some playing time last year as well with Dallas. Played pretty poorly, but they don't really have a better option. So Kellen Moore is going to be out there. Dallas. The thing about Dallas is they have the best offensive line in the league. So right off the bat, that's not going to help you in this league. You want a shitty, terrible offensive line. This offensive line is bullish. They're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to give the ball to rookie Ezekiel Elliott out of your alma mater, Ohio State University.
Go Bucks.
He's going to get about 400 carries this year, and they're going to stack the box with 9 guys every single play.
He's going to have a 5-year-long career because he's going to beat the shit out of.
Well, yeah, Big Ten running backs, they
Right.
never have long careers because it is so tough in the Big Ten. But I got to say, if I do have to add in a little bit of analysis, and this is for free, guys. By the way, this is free. Kellen Moore is not going to be a quarterback that I target very often. Now, if they play against an elite defense, if they're playing against a top 5 defense, I think Kellen Moore is a no doubt number 1, number 2 pick. But the problem is the Cowboys will be running the ball a lot, and they can run it effectively, so they're going to be able to control the clock. And again, that's another thing you don't want. You want your team to be behind by a lot, so they got to keep throwing the ball.
Right.
You rack up those incompletions. You force throws over the middle and get interceptions.
Right. That's something I was going to bring up later, but it might as well transition to it now. There are plenty of teams out there with bad quarterbacks, but obviously they know that. They know their quarterback's bad, so they choose to run the ball a lot. And so it makes for a safe bet, for a safe pick, but you're not going to get a lot of points out of that.
Right.
You're going to get a middle-of-the-road amount of points out of a bad quarterback with a strong running back behind him.
Right. So for comparison, you could look at that sort of like having Alex Smith, the quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, on your regular fantasy team. He's probably not going to get you 30 points. He's not going to have a huge game, but he's also pretty reliable for a solid 9 to 12, 13 points a week. And if in this league, it's all about getting ahead and staying ahead. So if you're not wanting to take a lot of chances, if you want to get a guy who's just going to get you some points and not put you in the negatives, then Kellen Moore is probably a good bet.
Good point. Let's move on. Who's the next team?
So moving on, unfortunately, this is another injury-spurred quarterback. This is Sean Hill of the Minnesota Vikings. Teddy Bridgewater just a few days ago went down with a devastating leg injury.
Knee, right?
Yeah, knee injury, a non-contact knee injury, which some were saying could have threatened his career.
I heard their teammates were vomiting from how disgusting it was.
It was apparently really bad. So best wishes to Teddy Bridgewater. He was a few times used.
A favorite.
He was used, and I feel bad because it's not an indictment of Teddy Bridgewater's career because I think he is a solid player, but the Vikings just weren't very good last year. So he was a popular pick.
And he's one of those teams that I was talking about that he's kind of a safe bet because they've got Adrian Peterson behind him that they're just going to give the ball away.
Absolutely.
There's no reason for him to throw the ball when they've got Adrian Peterson. It just doesn't make any sense.
It's that. It's also their defense was not terrible last year, so they were able to put Teddy on the field a lot, which it's always good if you're on the field more in this league because, there's just more opportunities for you to screw up. So Sean Hill's going to take over. Now, Sean Hill is a sneaky good quarterback in my opinion. If you look at his career, he's never been a full-time starter, but he did start 10 games with Detroit all the way back in 2010. Where he went 3-7, but he threw 16 touchdowns and only 12 picks. So right off the bat, that's a red flag. When you got a quarterback who's throwing more touchdowns than picks, you don't want that at all. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. It's hard to find guys who throw more picks, but you want somebody who's just reckless with the ball. Sean Hill, he does so 12 picks that year.
Who did he throw that for? Detroit?
That was with the Detroit Lions when they were just brutal. Back in the day, and then he's just been kind of a backup. He was with Detroit for a few years, bounced to St. Louis in 2014, and then Minnesota last year. So this is his second year with Minnesota. So he probably has a little bit better understanding of the playbook, which again is going to be a detriment in this league.
However, anyone sitting behind Teddy Bridgewater, you got to assume he's worse than Teddy Bridgewater. At least the coaches feel he is.
Maybe not. Because with Teddy Bridgewater, they used a high draft pick on him. So they're going to be playing him regardless. Even if he's, maybe a little bit worse or than Sean Hill, he might still be starting. So Sean Hill, he's been a backup in this league since he was 25. He's been in the league for 10 years. And that means that coaches trust him, and I think that he'll do what coaches tell him. He's not going to be the guy who's scrambling out trying to make a crazy play happen. He's going to throw it away. He's not going to get rid of the ball. So
throwing it away though, that's an
incompletion. But what you want is a pick.
Right,
and sometimes, and especially with bad quarterbacks, they don't see the field that much because they're throwing too many picks. So you want him to be on the field enough that he can rack up some points for you. So Sean Hill, I think, is going to be a guy who's drafted most weeks, but I think he's going to be drafted towards the bottom. And somebody who's picking 6, 7, 8 is probably going to get a nice little sneaky pick with Sean Hill.
Good call. Who's up next? You said we got 6. We're down to
this is number 3. So we got the I almost said St. Louis Rams, but they are the Los Angeles Rams now.
True. Yeah, that's confusing.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that yet. They're on Hard Knocks, so I always root a little bit more for teams on Hard Knocks because you kind of learn the names and everything of the players. But Jared Goff is the new quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams, of course, the number 1 overall pick in the draft. He's a California boy, so I'm sure he was pretty happy that he ended up in LA. Have you been watching Hard Knocks this year, Gator?
No, I don't. I've never seen a single episode.
See, to me, that is egregious. And I would say that if you're out there and if you like football especially, but even if you're not into football or sports, Hard Knocks is a show that I've shown people who are not into sports, and they've loved it.
I bet I would like it.
I mean, it's like a reality show, but it's production quality wise, it's miles above most stuff you see on TV.
Right.
But what Jared Goff has shown on the 4 episodes of Hard Knocks that I have watched is that he's maybe the dumbest starting quarterback in the NFL. This guy doesn't know if the sun sets in the east or west, and that's a verifiable fact, as we saw in episode 1 of Hard Knocks. Whenever he's talking or when a coach is explaining something to him, I mean, it's a 1,000-yard stare. It's like he has no idea what's going on. Now, I don't watch a lot of college football, so he might have looked very competent at Cal. But I don't really put a lot of stake in college because we've seen a lot of quarterbacks in this league who have been successful in college. Johnny Manziel, obviously the best example, who have just flopped in the NFL.
Marcus Mariota,
yeah.
Not to say that I think Marcus Mariota has a chance of being a good quarterback, but he's new. He's working with a team that doesn't have a lot of weapons for him. So
yep. And obviously, the landscape for quarterbacks and the mentality in the NFL has changed a little bit. A lot of it had to do with Andy Dalton. It used to be that when guys would get drafted, they would come into the league and maybe sit for a year or two and learn from the starting quarterback. But now they just throw him to the fire, and that's what Jared Goff's going to experience this year. So not only is he a brand new starting quarterback in the league, but he's starting for a team that just moved to LA with a fan base that's probably going to be expecting a lot. So in a brutal media market, I mean, just ask anybody who plays for the Clippers and the Lakers. It's hard to play in LA. So
we're looking for a Mariota type performance of last year because he was in the exact same situation. Yeah, slightly different, but it's his first year out and on a team that sucks, and he's expected to perform well.
Right.
And I wouldn't say that Mariota was the worst quarterback last year, but he was a pick for sure.
Yeah, he as most young quarterbacks have trouble with. He has trouble with protecting the ball, and that's just something that's learned in the NFL over time. But you got to take advantage of it in the bad quarterback league with these rookies. I mean, I think Jared Goff's going to be a weekly top of the board pick.
I think that's true. I think he's a good pick because the Rams also have a weak offensive line, and
that's true.
He's not going to be protected very well.
Now, the other side of that is they have Todd Gurley, who is one of the best running backs in the league. So, again, we run into a team that's going to have a bad quarterback who's going to be trying to run the ball a lot, probably going to be getting behind quickly. Although the Rams defense is competent, so
Right.
they might be okay there. And Jeff Fisher is a bit of a defensive coach, so. But Jeff Fisher is also a coach who just perpetually goes 8-8 and is just okay with mediocrity. So I don't have a lot of faith in Jared Goff. I wish him well. I don't like to watch people fail, but in this league, I do like to watch people fail.
That's the whole point.
So that was the third of 6 that we're going to talk about. I just want to take a quick break to acknowledge our commissioner, Brian Rankin. And the guy who made this all possible. I think that back in early 2014, the idea was thrown out. I had read, and we had read of people who were doing a league similar to this, and I thought the idea was cool, and Brian also thought it was cool, and Brian took the initiative.
He ran with it.
Yeah, he set it all up, and I kind of just treated it as a throwaway league from the get-go, but then once it started going, specifically last year when it was even more organized, it's just a blast. So
Absolutely.
Brian's been an extremely fair commissioner. We've had a couple of instances where there's been some debate on when certain quarterbacks are picked up, or rule-based things, or scoring suggestions, or anything. Brian's been very receptive to that, and his number one goal, which should be the number one goal of every fantasy commissioner, is having a league that everyone has fun in, and no one gets cheated out of anything, and that's what we have here. So,
and we're a young, developing league, and it's not like we're just a league that we're not a regular fantasy football league. We're trying to figure out our own rules right now.
Exactly.
And with that, I think maybe we should transition into suggestions for this year.
Yeah.
We're just going to brainstorm some new ideas that we have. Obviously, it's kind of late to be implementing new ideas, but maybe they won't be implemented this year. Maybe they'll be next year. But so I'll start with one. I'll start with the first one. I think it would be great to have a point system, some sort of scoring for injuries.
Okay.
Because one of the biggest problems, which it could be a good thing or a bad thing, if your bad quarterback gets injured, then he's out of the game for the rest of the game, and he can't score you any more points.
Right.
But a lot of times, that was I hate to say this, I hate to sound like this, but that was the funniest parts of the game. Watching Josh McCown get his third concussion of the year. You deserve some points for that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you never want to root for somebody to get injured.
That's true.
However, fantasy sports have never been a beacon for morality.
That's true.
Plenty of people had no problem with putting Adrian Peterson on their team after he beat the shit out of his kid.
Yep.
I'm sure that plenty of people would have been more than okay with adding Ray Rice to their team had he not been blackballed by the NFL. So I look at the numbers in this league. I think it's all about points, and I'm not really concerned with morality. So if it means I get an extra few points, I'm okay with rooting for someone to get seriously injured.
Oh my god!
Like really hurt.
So are you suggesting a tiered system
exactly.
for injuries?
A tiered injury system.
A rolled ankle is like 2 points, but if they die, it's 100.
I think it should be purely based on the amount of time that you miss.
Okay.
So if you're,
with going hand in hand, if a coach pulls you, points for that.
If a coach pulls you,
that's extra
like,
points.
That's like the pinnacle of bad quarterback.
I agree.
That's like there's some bad quarterbacks who get injured and their coach is just like, oh, thank God. But this is actually like, yeah, you're so bad that I just want you out as quickly as possible.
I agree. I think maybe even
a lot of points.
Exactly. I think even more so than injury. I think if we were to implement either of the two, I would vote for that one.
I agree. I think the concept or the hardest part of that would be the actual calculation, which would probably involve some manual work. And
speaking of our great commissioner, Brian Rankin.
Yeah, Brian, if you wouldn't mind just counting the amount of plays that each quarterback misses every week, that would be excellent. But I think that's a fantastic idea, and I think that that's something that could be implemented when we launch our eventual site that's going to probably change the landscape of fantasy sports, not the internet.
You just dropped it on him. You want to explain it a little bit?
I mean, I think that it's good to keep it under wraps.
Right.
I think it's something that we could maybe announce when it's finally ready to go. but I think that
finally ready, as if we've been working on it, as if we've started.
I'd like to believe that we have been working on it. I think that
with our brains.
Just because no pen has hit any paper doesn't mean that you haven't been working on it.
Fair enough.
So I think that, stay tuned for that. If you really want a treat, you're going to have to keep listening, because eventually we'll release that.
Sweet treat.
So I think that's a great suggestion. I would say, it's hard in this league to come up with a fair scoring system, because there is some debate onto what makes somebody a bad quarterback. For example, last year, Peyton Manning was not fantastic last year. But he still showed flashes of Peyton Manning.
Absolutely.
Obviously, he was benched because he had some arm strength problems and some injury problems. But Peyton Manning was consistently scoring pretty high
in regular leagues,
in both regular leagues and in our league.
Right.
And a lot of that had to do with the amount of times that the Broncos threw in a game, and he was racking up 15 to 20 incompletions a game, throwing a couple interceptions, and all of a sudden you got yourself a first round pick. And this league, I don't think, was ever intended for Peyton Manning to be drafted in the bad quarterback league. So I think that again, this is more lip service to Brian Rankin for putting together a scoring system that I believe to be the most fair. So I don't have any personal scoring suggestions. I think that we've kind of landed on a happy medium.
Well, not talk about scoring. Talk about anything. Anything you got.
Okay, suggestions for just other owners in the league. I would like to see a little bit more fire, a little bit more passion,
okay,
a little bit more shit talking. I think that's something it's present in this league, but it's a little nerfed. I think people are going a little easy, and I'd like to see more, just rape jokes, just horrible accusations. All
right,
just demoralizing
vulgar
people, tearing down their character. I think those are the things that can really set you over the edge in fantasy. I think they really do give you some sort of strategic advantage.
So I think that the thing that differs with our league and why you don't see some of that is we're not a matchup league.
Yes, that is true.
If we were to have head-to-head matchups, I would be calling you the bald-faced Aryan motherfucker that you are.
I take both of those as compliments, by the way.
So that's why you don't see a lot of it, I think. But
that's fair.
We could step it up.
That's fair. I think, this. I don't think I mentioned it, but this league is not head-to-head like many other fantasy leagues. It's a cumulative point total. So you're not specifically playing against anybody any given week. It is just you're playing against everyone. So it's harder to pinpoint your shit talking on one person. Yeah. But I would like to see more. We already do this a little bit, but I would like to see more griefing people for making bad picks. I think that anybody who makes a bad pick should be vilified immediately. I mean, they should be made to feel really bad about it.
Do it. Something else I don't think we mentioned is something new that we did last year where so at the beginning of the year we all put in $5 and the winner basically gets all the money. But something new we did last year was we put in an extra 10, I believe.
Something like that,
somewhere around that. And then every week we all decided a consensus vote, a game to bet on, and we would put that money down on a game. And then the idea was at the end of the year, we won a bunch of money. We'd have a bunch of money to split between all of us or throw some sort of party or something like that. And I thought that was a really good development last year.
Yeah, I think that definitely kept people interested. And sometimes our league, it kind of came down to the last minute as far as picking players. And one thing that kept people glued to the group me on Sunday mornings was who we were going to be betting on.
Right.
So in a way, for those of you looking to start your own bad quarterback league, this was a way that kept people engaged, even if they were well out of the standings by middle of the year.
If you're last place, you can't make it. You might not care about your quarterback pick, but you still care about who you're going to bet on because we decided to split that evenly. Yeah. That was a separate pot that was going to be split 10 ways evenly. Mm-hmm. By the way, 10 is the number of teams that we have, and we recommend no more than 10.
10 is a good number because I think 8 is too few. I think 8 you have there's too many. Everyone gets a bad quarterback. Right. I think 10 is a good number because the way that this league is structured is that the person who scores the most points in week 1, for example, would draft last in week 2. So it's reverse order. So if you scored the least amount, you draft first. So if you're somebody like me who's constantly at the top of the leaderboard every week, you're drafting 8th, 9th, 10th. So you kind of have to try a little bit harder. You kind of have to look at defensive matchups and see.
Sometimes you do pick the Peyton Manning.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe Peyton Manning's playing on the road in New England, and they got a really good defense. And it's on Monday night, and they always come to play. You might take Peyton Manning. So it adds a little bit of strategy. I think 12 is too many. I think anything over 10.
Yeah, that 12th guy's in trouble.
Yeah, you're gonna have some people just really unhappy. So 10 is, I think, is the sweet spot.
It's a perfect number. So judging by our 2-year data points,
Right. I mean, we probably have more case studies than most people in this sort of league.
Right.
So
one more suggestion
yes.
that I got, and I was talking to Brian about this today. Actually, it's a bold suggestion.
I like it.
I doubt it occurs.
Okay.
However, I am all in.
Okay.
The loser of the league, the last place finisher, gets a tattoo. However, this is coming. I just got a tattoo recently. My first tattoo.
Right.
It hurt like a bitch.
Sure.
All right. It's the tattoo that we were talking about. It's a simple tally mark.
Love it. Okay.
Tally mark on your ass. All right.
Ooh. All right.
Your butt cheek tally mark. Just one.
See, okay, here my take on that. I think the tally mark tattoo idea is fantastic because it's a way to get a tattoo that no one
5 minutes.
It'll take 5 minutes and no one's going to ask you about it.
Right.
I think most people will just assume that it's a pen mark or something. The issue I have is the location. I think that there's something about me specifically, and I've thought about this a lot because I know that that's sort of used as a bet. Like a lot of people make bets about getting tattoos on their asses specifically, and I kind of just want to keep my ass like clean.
So where would you put it?
I mean, almost anywhere else except my ass.
Okay.
Like
it's not as funny.
I think I would go like inner thigh.
Ooh, that's gonna hurt.
Yeah, but it's not about the pain.
It's gonna take 5 seconds.
Yeah,
it's not gonna hurt that bad.
I would be okay with that. As long as I got to pick the location.
So, right next to your junk.
Perfect. I'd much rather have that
right
than
up next to the
my
junk.
butt cheek.
Okay.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know why, but there's something about it. It's just like.
So I'm in. Are you in, Tony? If we pull
I'm
the
in,
group.
I mean, I'm in if everybody's also in and no one's gonna flake out.
All right.
Which is impossible to verify.
Well, we'll talk about this later. We'll talk with them.
Okay. I'm in.
I'm in. Great. Good news. All right, let's move on. We've got a few more quarterbacks.
All right, so we got the Houston Texans made a move this offseason. They picked up Brock Osweiler, the former quarterback for the Broncos. This is sort of an interesting one because Brock Osweiler has been with the Broncos, or he was with the Broncos for, I believe, 3 years, sitting behind Peyton Manning. I think it was similar to the Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers situation, where Aaron Rodgers was just kind of waiting for Peyton Manning to retire so he could take over, but he also understood like this guy's a legend, like he deserves it, whatever. I think towards the end he started to get a little frustrated. But now here he is on the Texans with he's got full control of the offense. It's his job to lose. Brock Osweiler is interesting because I've kind of kept my eye on him in actual fantasy because I've been intrigued because he's 6'7", he's a big tall dude who just looks like a quarterback. But
he wasn't a horrible quarterback last year.
Exactly. He threw for almost 2,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So, and that was over 8 games. So not remarkable numbers, but they weren't terrible.
And he was chosen over Peyton. Peyton didn't get injured when they picked him up. When they played him.
Right.
They made a conscious choice to put him in the game.
Exactly. So that's what that shows is a lot of confidence on the coaching staff. And again, I don't want confidence when it comes to picking my bad quarterback. I want somebody who the coach is feeling really conflicted about sending out there. And Osweiler, I think, is going to get a lot of opportunities in Houston. Now, that being said, Houston, they have one of the best wide receivers in the league in DeAndre Hopkins. They have what seems to be is going to be a pretty potent running game. However, I don't think Houston's going to be a playoff team. So I think they're gonna take some big lumps this year. I think they're gonna have some real bad games. And Osweiler being his first year in a new system it's hard for quarterbacks to learn a new offensive system in less than a year.
What's their running back situation like?
So the Houston Texans, they did lose Arian Foster, who has been the running back there for many, many years. Obviously, he's in Miami now, so he's the backup in Miami. But in Houston, and I'm not stalling. I promise I'm not stalling. But in Houston, they have Lamar Miller, who was the former Dolphins running back, who is a very...
So they switched quarter.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's a very he's a very popular fantasy running back. He's going to get drafted very high this year.
Okay.
So I think their running game is going to be just fine. That being said, me personally, I have somewhat of a grudge against Lamar Miller because I just don't think he's very good for really no reason at all. So
do you see Osweiler as one of those quarterbacks who's going to take some risks, he's going to bomb a ball that's going to get a pick six kind of situation?
I think.
Which, by the way, we did not mention pick sixes are the golden goose of the bad quarterback league.
Pick sixes will net you a total of 12 points.
Yeah, that's what you're driving for.
Yeah,
right there.
that's huge. Actually, technically 13 points because it's an incompletion as well. So
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that will get you 13 points, which is what you want. The thing about Brock Osweiler though is he does have DeAndre Hopkins, who is so talented and is the kind of guy who a quarterback could kind of just throw balls up to and have him catch it. That's not good because I want when he throws into triple coverage, I want the outcome to be an interception. And with a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, he almost never lets that happen.
Okay.
So that's where I'm hesitant. I'm also hesitant because the Texans play in a dome, which again is beneficial to quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Obviously, bad weather is going to help out your quarterback score in this league. So, me personally, I'm probably going to stay away from Osweiler if I can. But again, if he's playing against even a middle of the road defense, I'm going to be pretty bullish on him because I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. I don't think he's the guy that is going to be the quarterback there for many years, like the Houston Texans think he will be.
Right. All right, who we got next? What's up?
Perfect transition. The Broncos, Brock Osweiler's former team. They're starting a guy who is just marginally more famous than me. His name's Trevor Seaman.
Seaman Cumface.
Wow.
Trevor Seaman Cumface.
Okay, yeah, that's his name. Trevor Seaman Cumface. Jesus Christ.
You wanted vulgar, all right?
You're right.
I'm bringing it.
You're right. He is a second-year quarterback for the Broncos, so he was their third stringer last year. Somewhat of a surprise, I believe. I don't think he was really slated to be the starter. Don't the Broncos? Yeah, they have Mark Sanchez. So Mark Sanchez, I think, was the guy who a lot of people thought was going to be the starter.
Also, not a bad quarterback pick.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if in the event that Seaman gets benched or is injured, Mark Sanchez is. I mean, talk about a slam dunk pick.
The problem with the Broncos though, they've got some bad quarterbacks with them this year, but they've got support. They've got a solid team around them.
The Broncos just won the Super Bowl.
Right.
I mean, they're a Super Bowl winning team who, according to Pro Football Focus, is the 30th ranked team in quarterbacks this year. It's going to be the first time in NFL history that the returning Super Bowl champs are starting a quarterback who's never thrown a pass in the NFL. This is the first time this has ever happened. So the Broncos are going to be insanely entertaining to watch this year.
Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen?
They could be a playoff team. They could go 3 in 13. You don't know.
And the opening game of this season against the Panthers
on Thursday Night Football.
Incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
Considering the Panthers have arguably the best quarterback in the league and
they got Cam Newton.
One of the best defenses.
They haven't lost much over the offseason.
Yeah, they're going to be a strong team this year.
I think for a first time starting quarterback, that is a tough first game. For our sake, I hope that it goes poorly and it kind of ruins his confidence a little bit. Because I think that would you'd be able to ride him a couple weeks until he inevitably gets benched for Mark Sanchez, who will probably be just as mediocre. Mm-hmm. So the Broncos, I think, no matter who's behind the center, are going to be a team that most people in this league are going to target. So moving on to my favorite team in the bad quarterback league, a team that is guaranteed to give you just a solid performance all around.
Let me guess. Our commissioner's favorite team, The Cleveland Browns.
You are correct, sir. The Cleveland Browns, according to Pro Football Focus, the number 31st ranked team in the NFL as far as quarterback play goes. They are the only team they are ahead of is the San Francisco 49ers, which makes a lot of sense because Blaine Gabbert, as we all know, is terrible. So the Cleveland Browns, they are starting Robert Griffin III.
RG3.
I think RG3. What I would love to know is who is going to play RG3 in the Lifetime movie remake of his very short career.
Lifetime is the only network that's going to pick up that movie.
Exactly, because he's not going to be memorable enough to have the budget for sort of like a big Hollywood movie. It's going to be a very low budget movie.
30 for 30 ain't going to touch that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Robert Griffin, his first 3 years in the league, well, I guess his first year in the league was insanely successful, and we thought that we were seeing, the second coming of Jesus Christ when he walked onto the field. Unfortunately for him, it's gone quite poorly since then. After, if you exclude his rookie year, he is a quarterback with a career record of 5-15 over the last 2 years.
Whew.
He has thrown 20 touchdowns and 18 interceptions, and he's been sacked 71 times. So, I mean, to me, that just screams value. To me,
Right.
that screams somebody who's going to be, again, first or second pick every single week this year. I think even if the Browns are playing against a poor defense, it's not going to deter me from choosing their quarterback.
The only thing that scares me is the return of Gordon.
Josh Gordon.
Yeah. That's the only thing that scares me.
Literally the second coming of Jesus Christ, Josh Gordon, in fantasy.
Second time Tony's used the second coming of Jesus Christ in 2 minutes.
This is real, though, because Josh Gordon is the fantasy darling. Anybody who plays fantasy football, Josh Gordon is where you want to be.
So when you're talking about Hopkins, the guy who you don't want triple covered, RG3's not afraid to throw the ball
RG3 is not afraid to throw
down the field to Josh Gordon. He's not.
He's not. And Josh Gordon, even more so than DeAndre Hopkins, I would say, is a guy who can go up and get a ball. He can catch it in triple coverage. Josh Gordon hasn't played football in almost 2 years.
Right.
So I don't know how that return is going to look for the Browns and for RG3, but the other positive thing about RG3 is that he's a scrambling quarterback. Scrambling quarterbacks.
Positive? Is that
It's positive for our league.
okay?
Because scrambling quarterbacks, while they do pick up rushing yards, and there is the risk that they could rush a touchdown, the fumble risk goes up.
True.
The injury risk goes up.
But injuries doesn't help our team. That doesn't help our league.
It can, though. I think it's possible that it can, because if a guy comes out and throws 2 picks and then gets hurt, he can't redeem the points that he's
Fair.
Yeah,
It's a neutral play.
So it can go either way, but I just think there's more when you're a scrambling quarterback. There's a bigger chance for something to go wrong, and RG3 has proved that he can't take care of the ball. I think he's soft. I think he gets injured a lot. Well, I don't think that. I know it because it's true. Now, the other side of this, something that we haven't talked about, is coaching. And the Browns got a new head coach this year, and that's Hugh Jackson, who's the former offensive coordinator of the Bengals, who I'm a really big fan of. I've always liked Hugh Jackson. I thought he was a great coach in Oakland. He unfortunately, when they had they had Jason Campbell as their starting quarterback, he went down with an injury. Al Davis traded for Carson Palmer. That didn't work out for him, and Hugh Jackson got fired. So I think if that year when they traded for Carson Palmer, if Jason Campbell never got injured, Hugh Jackson might still be the coach of the Raiders. So a lot changed when that happened, but I think Hugh Jackson is a very competent coach. He's an offensive-minded coach. He's going to know where the strengths are in the offense, and he's going to use those strengths. So he's not going to do anything that's going to hurt their offense. So that's a point in the other direction. Right. That being said, that does not in any way outweigh
you're
RG3.
gunning for RG3.
Yeah,
you're gunning.
Absolutely. RG3 is my pick to click, as they would say on CBS.
So that kind of transitions into one of my questions I had here for you. So I think I know your answer right now. But let's say week 1, you get number 1 draft pick, ignoring the matchups right now.
Okay.
Ignoring the matchup. Yeah, you reach for your keyboard, all right? We're ignoring the matchups. Who's your pick? Who's your worst quarterback right now?
If I'm absolutely ignoring All
matchups. Ignore them.
It does not matter what defense they're playing against. I think I got to go Jared Goff.
Okay.
And that's purely on experience. I think
Okay.
the NFL, unlike some other professional sports, is it's very important to have a lot of experience because obviously you got 11 guys on your team. If you're the quarterback, you're the one commanding all those guys. It just takes a long time for you to get acclimated. And when you're not that smart, like I perceive Jared Goff to be, it takes you even longer. So I think that this season is going to be extremely rough for Jared Goff. I think he's going to throw more interceptions than he throws touchdowns. I think he's going to look lost at times. And he's just going to make some really egregious plays. I think RG3 is going to be my second choice, but the benefit he has is he's got 3 years of experience in the league.
All right, I'm going to take someone who you have not mentioned in those two picks. I'm going to go Blaine Gabbert.
Okay.
The reason I don't choose Goff is because of the fear of running the ball too much and the inexperience. I think Gabbert is that perfect balance of risk. He's going to throw the ball a little bit, but he's got no one to support him. He's got no one to help him out. Let's see. I've got him here as they've got one of the worst O-lines in the league. That's not going to help him out.
Yep.
I don't know any super receivers that he's going to be thrown to. So he's my pick. He's my number one right now, ignoring matchups.
I think that's a solid choice because and everything you mentioned is true. And also the 49ers coaching staff, since Jim Harbaugh was unfairly ousted from San Francisco, which I thought was just it was absolutely ridiculous.
Well, they sent him to one of
Michigan.
the worst places up
Yeah,
north.
I mean,
Michigan.
It's awful. So I thought that was a terrible decision. And since he's left, for all that was said about how toxic their locker room was and how he didn't know how to keep a team together, it's gotten way worse since he's left. So I'm not really sure I don't see it getting any better. So right. I think that's a great pick. I think Blaine Gabbert is a solid choice. He's never going to get you negative points. That's for damn sure.
Yep. True. All right. Now that we've run through those new quarterbacks, let me fire off a couple of questions for you that they can be quick. You don't have to dive too much into detail, but
what are you trying to say? You trying to say I'm long-winded about this kind of stuff?
I'm fine with it. It's cool.
See,
I love it.
This is the kind of tension we don't need. As the first podcast, I think we should at least keep it civil. And I don't like that you're sort of coming at me.
You know what? You can edit all this out later. All right? I'm
not going to.
You dumb piece of shit. All right. All right. So give me. We've already talked about some teams in O-line trouble. My top two teams, the Rams and the 49ers. I think both our top two quarterback picks can reflect that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I honestly, if you had to ask me if I would pick two teams, those are the two I would pick. I think, again, ignoring matchups, the 49ers and the Rams are going to be where the top of this draft board lives every single week.
Yep. So let's jump to, let's talk about matchups. Let's talk about the best matchup. When you see, this team is going up against these guys, they've got a solid defense. Yeah. Who are you looking at?
So I'm probably going to be selecting most quarterbacks who play against the Cincinnati Bengals this year.
Okay.
Ignoring the fact that I'm a huge Bengals fan, I think they got a top 5 defense this year.
They do.
They haven't lost much from last season, and they were fantastic last season. I think the Bengals are a real Super Bowl threat this year. I think they have a chance if they can, get their shit together in the playoffs. Obviously, that's not relevant to this league, but in the regular season, they take care of business. And this year, the Bengals are going to be thinking Super Bowl. They're not going to be thinking about week 2. Obviously, they're going to try to win, but they're expecting to win. They're expecting to win 14 games this year and go to the Super Bowl. So their defense is going to be tenacious, and any quarterback that's playing against them, I think, is a safe bet. I think, also a team like the Carolina Panthers.
They're my number one now. My top 2 is this opening Thursday night match. I think anyone going up against the Panthers and the Broncos is someone to keep an eye on, no matter who it might be.
Yeah.
I think especially when you get toward, if you're the last pick, if you've got a top tier quarterback going up against one of those teams, they still might have a bad day, Absolutely. And that brings in, some of the strategy of this league is sometimes when you are the 10th pick or the 9th pick, it's just about who the matchup is. Sometimes you are picking a good QB against a really good defense.
A good defense, especially when it's on the road. It's hard to play on the road in the NFL. So.
How much do you think home and away comes into play in this league? In this league,
for me, I consider it heavily. It's not something I take lightly because I think for quarterbacks specifically, and for quarterbacks who are low, in the experience department, playing on the road is much more difficult than playing at home.
True.
And I think there's a lot of people out there who maybe downplay that a little bit, but I think that's ignorant, because if you just look at the stats of the NFL games, playing at home, you just have a much better chance of winning.
Well, I think in regular fantasy leagues, when you have an entire team to pick you up on the road, when you have an entire team, you've got someone who might be having a rough day on the road, but someone else can pick up your slack. But in this league, we are focused on one player.
Yeah, that's a great point, because if you got Jared Goff at home against the Tampa Bay Bucks, that's a pretty favorable matchup for a bad quarterback.
Right.
But if you got Andy Dalton on Thursday night in Pittsburgh, that's something that you got to think about. As much as I love Andy Dalton, it's hard playing in Pittsburgh on a Thursday night.
Thursday night for the Bengals has not been great.
Right. So these are all things that you have to consider,
right.
and I urge my league mates to not consider them, so that I can scoop up the best picks every week.
All right, one more for you here, and this is one of my last figures that I go looking at. But what teams do you think are in wide receiver trouble? And like I said, it's one of my least looked at statistics, because there's plenty other things that are going to incorporate to a quarterback having a bad day. But
yeah,
he's got to have someone to throw to, right?
That's a good point. And I think that the obvious choice there would be the Tennessee Titans. I mean, they've traditionally had a hard time finding their franchise wide receiver, and even dating back to the Kenny Britt days when they thought he was going to be the guy. They've just kind of always had guys who are just sort of mediocre.
They're all right.
Yeah, and they've had guys like Kendall Wright, who they still have, who I think is a solid receiver, but they've never had like that AJ Green, Andre Johnson, like stud wideout who can pick up a quarterback.
And that's why Mariota's one of my top picks this year, because his receivers are just bad enough that he's still going to try and throw to him. He's not like Kansas City, who's going to ignore his wide receivers completely and just focus on the tight ends.
That's a good point.
He's going to try and throw to him, but it's not going to work out too well for him.
Yeah, and a lot of people, unfortunately, the Rams are in that same boat. You talk about a team that has a poor quarterback. I don't know if I can name two Rams wide receivers, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I know they got they got Kenny Britt, as I already mentioned. Which, when Kenny Britt and Tavon Austin is a good player, but he's a little tiny slot guy. They don't have that big like Calvin Johnson, type commanding wide receiver who's going to anchor your wide receiver core. They just got a bunch of tiny quick guys. So if Jared Goff, and again, I don't watch a lot of college football, but if he did a lot of West Coast style play in college where he was throwing short passes over the middle and slants and out routes, then he might be okay. But I don't have a lot of faith in that wideout core.
That's fair.
So we want to talk about some of our fellow league owners, or some of our fellow team owners here.
Let me hit you up with one more thing before we get there. One more thing. Give me a bold prediction. That being said, who's your top tier quarterback? Who's your top 5, top 10 quarterback that you think is going to be the worst this year? A good pick for the 10th rounder. Let's go top 5. I want to see a big name, not
so somebody that you wouldn't expect to end up near the bottom of the quarterback rankings. Okay. That's tough, because obviously you got your Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, Carson Palmer, Tom Brady's, those guys.
Right.
They're pretty much never drafted. I think probably you could look at somebody like Kirk Cousins, maybe, or Jameis Winston.
He's too low. So
you want higher?
I want higher than that. Even if they're not ever going to get drafted this year,
someone who's going to regress.
Who's your worst top tier quarterback right now?
Okay, I'd probably say Matt Ryan.
Okay,
I think Matt Ryan is just I have not been able to put my finger on where Matt Ryan ranks in the quarterback rankings, because every year he seems to be somewhere near the top 10. And he either has some crazy, amazing year or just kind of like an okay year. So I think that Matt Ryan, has maybe peaked. He's 31 years old. He's been in this league for a while now. Now
last year, I believe the Falcons struggled at home. They were a
Weirdly.
terrible team at home.
Weirdly, they were bad at home. I don't know the exact what went down with that, but I believe you're right. They did go 8-8 last year. Matt Ryan was competent. I mean, more than competent. 4,500 yards, 21 touchdowns is a solid year, but 16 picks. When you got a +5 TD interception ratio, +5, that's not really that impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt Ryan has had bad years before. He's had great years before. So if you got to pick somebody who has some pedigree, I think Matt Ryan is sort of a sneaky pick, maybe against a good defense.
I like it. For me, I'm going to go even bolder. I'm going top shelf right now. I'm going Jack Daniels. That's not top shelf. I don't know. But I couldn't think of some top shelf liquor at the moment. Some Bacardi Barbie.
There you go.
That's not even, I don't
know. Some Sky vodka.
Some Kamchatka. Yeah. Orloff.
Some Smirnoff.
Yeah, there we go. I'm going Drew Brees.
Drew Brees.
I have a personal vendetta with Drew Brees.
Let's hear it.
I last year I had him in an actual fantasy league. I got him as he was supposed to be one of the best quarterbacks last year, and just supposed to give me the shit ton of points. Everyone was like, "Oh, great pick! You got a great pick." He fucked me. All right, he fucked me. Okay?
Drew Brees? Last
Brees.
season?
Yeah. He did not do well. All right.
I don't know. He had a pretty good year.
Nah, fuck him.
32 touchdowns.
I'm done with old man Brees. Get that scar off your face, you motherfucker.
That's how dare you?
Oh my God. Get it off your dumb face.
Unfortunately, in this league, you do not get any points for physical blemishes.
I think he's old. He's old. This is the year he regresses.
He's 37.
This is the year he falls.
He's 37 years old.
I said it was a bold pick, okay? I said it was bold.
We've obviously seen the best of Drew Brees. I don't know. Here's the thing about Drew Brees. Ever since he's been in the league, he's been a guy who just throws bombs. I mean, the guy has got great arm strength, and he just throws deep passes to guys like Marquise Colston in that dome in New Orleans, and just has good seasons every year. But that's not the skill set you want for a guy who's going to have a lot of longevity as he gets older. As we saw with Peyton Manning, as soon as the arm strength goes, that's it. You can throw 10-yard passes, but you can only be so effective that way. So I don't know if I haven't heard any reports of Drew Brees' arm strength diminishing, but he's 37, so it's only a matter of time before that happens.
And as a viewer of the Bad Quarterback League, a bomb is what I want to see. That's when I get excited.
When the ball's in the air and you're pretty sure there's double coverage,
right,
things start to get a little bit exciting.
Because when you can't see the end goal in mind on the screen, all you see is the ball. You don't see the who's covering who. You get excited because it's either going to be good or bad, you know, and that's something fun to watch. So, all right. So next, let's talk about the owners of our league. Let's get specific with the individuals, the fuck shit, dumb dipshit holes. Fuck God, you're gonna want to edit that out.
It's preseason.
I'm trying to get more vulgar.
It's preseason for the NFL. It's preseason for our trash talk.
Right,
so
we're warming up. We're warming up. We want to talk about the individuals in our league, the upstanding individuals,
of course.
So let me pull this up here. Let's go down the list. Let's start off with our league champion last year.
Might as well.
The Lord Pretty Flacco Joey.
Of course, which we all know is a reference to A$AP Rocky and Joe Flacco.
I didn't.
Which no one got this season.
Nope.
So I'm glad that I picked something universally understood.
Right. Tony DiMatteo. Let's talk about yourself.
Well, the first thing I'll say is that name's going to change because I don't think I drafted Joe Flacco once all season.
Okay.
So I'm going to come up with some other sort of extremely clever pun like I did last year.
Right.
Now that being said, I don't plan to change anything this season. I think that when you find the formula that wins you championships, you repeat that formula.
You had a good year. You had a lot of solid, consistent weeks. You did not have the highest scoring week in the league. That is actually, believe it or not, given to Lauren.
Wow. And which we'll talk about later. Why
We
that's
will.
surprising.
We will, but
Yeah, and you know what? That I had just one week where I ended up in negative points. And it's very similar to how I kind of play my other fantasy leagues. Is I don't necessarily have to have the team that's scoring 200 points a week, but I try to put together a team that I know is going to keep me competitive throughout the year.
that being said, you had some really high scores. A lot of high scores.
I did, but my point is I didn't have very many low scores, and I think that's the key to winning this league.
Right.
Is you don't want to have a week where you come up with negative 25 points.
Right.
That's going to be detrimental.
All right, let's move on to T-Bone Your Girl by your brother.
T-Bone Your Girl was John Diotel, the runner-up in this league. He lost to me by just a mere 17.82 points,
Which is that's like a week.
That's a week of play.
Yeah.
That could have easily gone either way. So John was right with me for a majority of the year.
I would say he had more consistent scores than you did.
Yeah. If you go and look at his totals, he was in double digits quite a bit.
There was only 2 weeks that he wasn't.
Yeah, 2 weeks that he wasn't in double digits, and
one
week that he had a
negative.
really bad negative week which really lost in the league.
It did.
If you think about it. I mean, negative 20.66 points in week 8. That's an absolute killer. So that's what I go back to what I'm saying. You can't have weeks like that if you want to win this league.
You can't. You
Now,
just can't.
John's a very pragmatic owner. He's very light on the trash talk, but he doesn't have to trash talk. I think his mentality is he doesn't have to trash talk because he knows he's going to be at the top of the standings. So I can respect that out of him. I would like to see a little more fire, a little more passion.
Bring it,
in
John.
the group chat.
Bring it, you dumb motherfucker.
Don't be afraid to make fun of the wives of some of the players in this league.
Go for it. They can handle it.
They're in the league too. They can take it. I think it's sexist to not go after them personally.
They're offended.
Absolutely, and as they should be.
Number 3, Beats by Ray.
Beats by Ray.
Drew Staley.
A great
newcomer.
A newcomer, a great team name. I can always respect somebody when they come up with a good topical team name.
True. Oh, you know what? I lied. Beats by Ray had the highest scoring week. Week 5, 48.18 points.
So that's how you make a little bit of a mark on
Right.
on your fellow league mates there. 48 points is
3 weeks in a row right there. 20 points, 48 points, 39 points.
and then a bad week, and then another 35er.
Yeah,
I mean, you
that's-
talk about a guy who built a commanding lead early in the season,
And
only
let's-
to watch it fade
Right.
as the season went on.
Let's
Unfortunately.
mention Drew is our statistical analysis genius. He was one that we went to a lot when we were making those bets every week.
Yes. Drew is very knowledgeable when it comes to putting money on football games, which obviously is what fantasy sports is. So
Right.
he's, I think, most people's favorite probably to win this league.
I think we're going to lean on him a lot this year when it comes to the betting. I think him being a newcomer last year, a lot of people didn't respect his opinion, and
Absolutely.
And now I think we're ready to listen, Drew.
I think he's proven that we should listen to him.
Right.
I think he's more qualified than basically anybody in this league.
Right. I believe if I remember correctly, Brian said his graduate degree is, I don't know if it's master's, doctorate, or something. It's in sports statistics.
Right, and he works for some sort of company that does sports analysis.
Right.
So I mean, we're really putting ourselves at a disadvantage here.
We're ready for you, Drew. We're ready for you. Next up, Peyton's Neck, which is a
Peyton's Neck.
fantastic team name.
Great name.
Alex
Austin?
Evdokue.
Oh, it's Alex. I'm
Of
sorry,
course,
Alex.
of course. Fourth runner-up. I guess third runner-up. Third
if you wanna
runner-up.
be
You know.
technical.
Let's see. How did he do? Yeah, pretty solid, especially toward the end of the season there.
Yeah, he started off a little slow. I mean, he had a couple puttering weeks there through week 6, but he really started to turn it on. And then towards the end of the season, just a surge.
Lit it up.
31, 18, 20, 23, 16. I mean, that is a run right there towards the end.
That's
really
what put him in
turned it
fourth.
on.
That's
Yeah.
what put him in fourth right there.
Yeah. So if that run would have started a little bit earlier in the season, evidently Alex made some adjustments. Sometime around week 9 or week 10, and it paid off, as you can see from the standings.
And we're looking at another person with only one negative week and a fairly minimal negative week. -2 is...
Yeah, that's mitigating damage for sure.
Right. Let's go to our commissioner, Mike Pettinzoo. Great name.
It is a
But
great name.
It's got to
Unfortunately,
change.
It will change.
It's got to change.
As Mike Pettin was given a whopping 1 season to turn around the Browns, or maybe 2. I don't know. It doesn't matter. They go through coaches.
Not a lot
like
of
it's
not a lot
nothing.
of confidence there. Oh, let's see how Brian did. Let me pull this up here. Oh, strong week 1 with 38 points.
Yeah, it's strong almost to where you start to question the ethics of the league, I would say.
One of the more inconsistent teams, I would say.
Very inconsistent.
He's got as high as 38, 37, but he's got a negative 14, a negative 10.
Brutal.
Those are rough.
That's going to hurt you for sure. I mean, he even put up a goose egg in week 15.
Goose egg. Don't be ready for my team. There's a couple of goose eggs. I've already checked it out.
But I mean, again, goose egg sometimes is a positive.
It's better than negative 14.
Right.
It's better than week 7 there.
But Brian he's obviously extremely well versed on bad quarterback play. Being a Browns fan, he has been raised in an era of just brutal, awful quarterback play. So if anybody knows
Quarterbacks.
how to seek out a terrible quarterback, it's Brian Rankin, who's probably watched more bad quarterbacks play than anyone I know.
Here's where we start getting into the lower half of the league.
That was first 5. That was your top 5 players. So I guess you could say probably the best 5 players in the league, and
Fair.
these would be the worst 5 players in the league.
Good point. We've got Jose's mustaches, Aaron Carnevale, a baseball team name.
Also a football team name, a fantasy conglomerate. Some people have called it a fantasy corporation of Jose's mustaches. He uses it in all sports across all leagues. Jose's mustaches is what he's branded his conglomerate.
I like consistency. I
do
it.
as well.
That team name's never going to change.
It's not going to change, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't adopt the same policy in some of my other leagues.
Fallopian tubes?
Yes, fallopian tubes being the name. I can't say I'm going to carry that over to this league because I think that there is some value in having a clever sort of punny name in this league. I think that does, give you the extra edge.
Right.
But I can respect Aaron for his consistency.
We are looking at a rough first 4 weeks. Almost no points.
It's almost as if he didn't really understand the concept of the league. I mean, if you look at through what week 4, he had 7 points total, something like that.
No, not even that. We're -1 in
right,
week
yeah.
4. We're looking at 5 points total.
5 points through 4 weeks, which I'm sure slotted him in last. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Well, let's not
we'll
speak
find
too
out.
soon.
We'll find out later. But there's just no way.
But I will say,
His end of the season picked up pretty solid.
similar to Alex, he came on strong there towards the end, including a 36-point week 15. But it was just too little, too late for the mustaches. They had built too far, or they had amassed too much of a disparity, and they just couldn't come back from it.
True. Now we're on to, in my opinion, my vote for the worst team name in the league. Lauren's team.
I think that's a fair vote for worst team name in the league.
Lauren, we're calling you out. You need to step it up this year.
Honestly, I'll go as far to say, if you don't change the name, I think that's warranted for being kicked out. I think that you have to put enough effort in to change your name to something related to
That's
football.
fair. You can't just ride the commissioner's coattails,
I
Lauren.
agree.
You can't do it.
I mean, Lauren, we've been telling you this for many years. You found Brian. He's a great dude. He's a great commissioner.
Beautiful man.
He has propped you up to a level in life that you would have never dreamed of based on your own abilities.
Exactly. You are.
And yet, you still refuse to put in the effort to change your team name.
We want to see some effort. Commit to fitness, Lauren.
I mean, it's honestly, it's a little bit insulting.
Hey, John, remember how we were talking about insulting wives? This is how you do it. This is a prime example. Let's get into the statistics.
Of course, that's what we care about.
Lauren, I'm sorry. We're sorry.
Lauren, similar to Aaron, had a bit of a tough start. I won't say it was as bad as Aaron's
No,
start.
it wasn't.
And honestly,
Statistically, it wasn't.
she came back pretty strong towards the middle of the season, but sort of faded. I mean,
That last week,
the last
though,
week,
that
the
last
45-point week in the last week was
second highest scoring.
I think that you look at her season much differently if that doesn't happen. I think
True.
if she puts up an 8-9 point week, she's flirting with the bottom of the
Absolutely.
standings.
Absolutely.
So I think that it's good to end the season on a high note. and that's what Lauren did, and I think that she's going to be looking to take that 45 into a strong 2016.
Exactly. Who we got next? We got me.
We got Kenny Calgucci, number 1 QB.
This is a team name. I'm not going to change mine.
I love it. I love the backyard football reference. We all love Kenny Calgucci in his wheelchair.
That's the vulgar. I started the vulgar from the very beginning. He's a bad quarterback because he's in a wheelchair.
I don't think anybody would argue. It's not politically correct, okay, guys? It's not politically correct, but it's also true.
Yeah.
And really that's what we look for, is truth.
Let's take a look at my numbers here. Let's
Absolutely.
look at week 16 and 17.
So if you look at week 16 and 17 for Kenny Calgucci,
What did I do?
it's almost as if you stopped playing.
Did I? I don't remember.
Because you ended up with 2 zeros. Now there's a chance that Commissioner Bryan did not add in those points and maybe used manual scoring towards the end of the season last year, which could have happened because Yahoo, how restrictive and really anti-libertarian they are. They don't allow you to do all the scoring changes that you'd like to do.
Maybe. There's a chance.
So, but just for the sake of this podcast and the information we have available, I'm willing to say that you just shit the bed the last
That's
2
fair.
weeks. And I think that, watching Lauren climb far above you in the standings with that final 45-point week has to leave a little bit of a bad
hurts.
taste in your mouth.
Because if you look at my week 9, from week 9 to 15, these are decent numbers.
If you cut it down week 9 to the rest of the season, or really, excluding the 2 zeros, that you would think that this guy, put up some solid numbers for the rest of the season. But unfortunately, that was not the case.
Exactly.
What do you think went wrong for you last year?
I don't know. I didn't start off strong. I had Josh McCown was my boy in 2014, and I couldn't rely on him in 2015. I couldn't.
I think Josh McCown was an example specifically for you of a guy who, if he would have been in the game for longer, he probably would have put up some more points for you. But he did get injured frequently last year.
A lot, and
Yeah,
that was one of the problems. If I would draft him, he would throw me one pick, and then he would get himself a concussion. So it just didn't work.
And that's not going to help you because you need more picks out of Josh McCown.
Right.
So is that going to change your strategy at all this season?
If we were to implement the injury rule,
Yeah.
I'd keep picking Josh McCown every week.
Okay, so
Josh
there is an
McCown.
agenda behind this push for the injury
Exactly,
rule.
there is.
As long as we know where you're coming from.
Right.
So I think it's important to get the agendas out there.
Right. But yes, I think I'll take a little more risk. I think I'll play some.
Okay.
I think I'll play a little.
See, I think when you end up towards the bottom of the standings, which I wouldn't know much about, but for you, I think ending up towards the bottom of the standings, you do have to make a change in the way that you play the game.
While Tony's talking shit, I'm going to bring up the 2014 rankings and let's see what was your
sure, we can go back to ancient history if you'd like to.
What was your 2014 name?
I can't say that I
Was it
really,
Picky Six?
I can't say that.
That sounds like you.
It was Picky Six.
It was Picky Six.
A reference to Nikki Six,
right?
Of course.
You're 5. That's
yeah, which I would say, as we
middle of
talked
the
about
road.
earlier, one of the top 5 teams in the league, which is a verifiable fact.
That's fair. That's fair.
And I would also mention that I ended up with 211 points. Okay. Now, if we look at
scoring
Gators,
changes, scores the scoring system
I don't know
changed.
if that really matters. I think that what I can say is that I finished with about 50 more points than you did.
While we're on the subject of 2014 and someone who just walked in
Look
the room,
who just walked in.
Look who's last in 2014. Absolute last place was Jose's mustaches.
Now, the benefit of that, if I can say this while Aaron's standing right here, is that his team improved by 3 spots in the standings over a year. So, that's a pretty big improvement.
6. He was up to number 6. So that's, 4 spots?
Well, we only had 9
Oh,
teams
good
in
point.
2014.
Good point.
It's really difficult for me to pick bad players in fantasy sports.
He's going to learn.
Aaron says his trouble picking bad players, which I think he's trying to say that he's so good at fantasy
Right.
that he can't fathom picking a player that's not going to get him positive points, which in this league would of course be negative points.
Aaron has yet to break into the top half.
If I could refute that point, I would say that somebody who's truly great at fantasy is able to understand the scoring system and knows exactly what they're looking for and who they're drafting. And I think that that comment by Aaron, it really just proves that he's very one-dimensional in his fantasy ability.
True. He's not thinking about all corners of the box, all corners of the rectangle. He doesn't know. Let's move on. Next guy, 2015. Who are we talking about here?
Got dirty butt fumbles.
Great team name.
Love it.
Speaking of Mark Sanchez,
Yeah, unfortunately for the dirty butt fumbles, Mark Sanchez, unless barring injury or benching, Mark Sanchez will not be available.
right? Maybe later in the year he will. But we're talking about Austin Rabat.
Yeah, and for Austin's sake, I hope that Sanchez is available because the amount of negative weeks that Austin had were just way too many for him to have any sort of competitive ability in this league.
He had a lot of. I'm gonna fight for Austin. He had a lot of bad luck. He made some good choices because Austin was consistently at the bottom of the draft order.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, at the top of the draft
Yeah.
order, but the bottom of the scoring.
Exactly.
Just bad weeks. Like every time Austin would pick Johnny Manziel, he would throw
He'd
like
throw
3
an 80-yard
touchdowns.
touchdown to Travis Benjamin. And that's true. Austin did get struck with some bad luck last year. Austin is also a person who is very well informed as far as football and fantasy goes. So, it's hard to be too rough on him as far as his the way that the season turned out. But the fact remains that those negative weeks are going to come back to bite
True,
you.
that's
And
fair.
That's
a
what
negative
happens.
17, that might be the highest in week 1.
Yeah, week 1 when you start with a 17-point deficit, it's hard to climb from that.
That's one of the highest negatives I've seen in the history of the league.
And it reflects his standing spot. Now, what I will say, which is different advice that I gave you, since I feel qualified to give advice to anyone who finished below me in this league, which I just want to mention was everyone. My advice to Austin would be to not change what he's doing, because I think that he was struck with a lot of bad luck last year, and if he just keeps drafting like he's drafting, he's going to be just fine.
Yep. Last but not least, last and
very much least,
Corgis for life, which I'm cool with that name.
Corgis for life is Gator's newly wed wife,
My beautiful wife,
Taylor Strand.
Taylor Strand. I almost called her Taylor
I
Hammonds.
know, I almost did too, and I was like,
Wow.
that's just strange.
Wow.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
To you and your wife.
It's been great.
I think that, to use a football term, I would say that it's wonderful that you outkicked your coverage with Taylor.
Oh, that's so true. I buy into that.
Now, that being said, she certainly outkicked her coverage as far as bad quarterback league decision making.
True.
Because you have one championship.
She has
which
none.
You brought one championship to the Strand dynasty, which she is now a part of. So
exactly.
So
I like
she
that.
does claim some ownership to that championship. I hope you know that.
I like that. Now, when we're looking at Taylor here, we go back to 2014. She was second to last.
Yeah.
Baby got Corgi back was her name in 2014.
Which again, I don't know what corgis have to do with football, but
Corgi back quarterback.
I know,
but
her
2014 was better than her 2015.
Agreed. But what I will say is that being a person who has somewhat of a prejudice against corgis in general, I would say that my advice to Taylor has nothing to do with the quarterbacks that she picks, because I think Taylor also suffers from bad luck like Austin did last year. She had some picks that I would have made myself that went horribly wrong.
Because she was consistently making the number one pick.
Right. However, I think that proves that the reason why she's at the bottom of the standings is due to her team names.
It's all corgis.
I think that's
it's the corgis.
I think that's it.
I'm telling you, she's not going to change it.
And I think that if she's okay with paying money to finish last every year, then I don't want her to change.
She's going to get that tally mark tattoo on her ass.
I mean, I can't necessarily disagree with that.
Turns me on.
Then I think it's a win-win for you.
It is. I'm in. If we look at her numbers here, we're looking at a lot of negative weeks as well.
Yeah.
But some fairly low numbers until we hit week 9. That I lied when I said negative 17 was the worst. Negative 21 is the worst.
Absolutely brutal.
That's terrible.
And I don't have it in front of me as to who that was.
No.
And I wish I did. Because I bet it was a pick that a lot of us thought was a good one.
Right. Probably was. But Taylor, in terms of positive numbers, it doesn't go above 20.
No.
That's
and,
rough.
That's kind of, with some people, the negative games is what knocks you out. But with Taylor, her positive games were just not quite positive enough.
What was the thing you brought up earlier about Taylor scoring? About Tony said before the podcast started that Taylor scored 106 points. The leader, Tony himself, scored 269. She lost by more points than she scored.
Yeah, she trailed by 162 points at the end of the season. So that's where, if you're planning on starting your own bad quarterback league, that's where the betting comes into play, because Taylor was more invested in that, I think, by the end of the season.
Absolutely.
Because she was, well out of the race, but she was still very she was participating in the actual voting for who we were betting on that
Absolutely.
year. So highly recommend that to your league. Also, again, to Taylor, I would say, if you're going to change anything, just change the name. Please, from a champion,
baby, from the original champion, you're fine.
Wow.
You keep it.
Well, I will say it's up to you, but that's what I plead, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, with that, let's move on to our predictions. And let me say, this is probably one of our longer shows. This is going to be one of our longer shows of the whole year.
Yeah, we appreciate you sticking around.
If you're still listening at this point, we'll suck your dick.
Kudos. Yeah, just tweet
do
at me, DM, put it in the DMs, because that's where I hear it goes down.
Say apple banana cream pie, and we'll suck your dick. Well, that's how we'll know.
If that's how you tweet, then I probably won't be sucking your dick.
Well, I want to know it. I want to know. So,
let's hear what you got. What do you think? Let me ask you this: Who do you think is going to finish in second this season?
I'm so glad you asked that. I think this is the year of the girls.
Wow.
I think Lauren and Taylor, 2 and 3.
Whoa.
2 and 3.
See, that right there is a bold prediction. Do you want to tell me why you think the girls are going to be up that high?
I think they've struggled for 2 years in a row, and I think they're willing to put in the effort. I think they're willing to put in their research, and they're going to listen to this podcast, and they're going to learn from 2 champions.
Much like the women's suffrage movement.
Exactly.
They've struggled for a long time.
They've suffered for long enough.
They banded together, and they took what was theirs.
Exactly. I think this is the year of the girls. However, just like the inevitable, women struggle, they're never going to be top dog. They're not
always
going
to make 78% of what a man makes.
Exactly.
Which puts them at least third or fourth, I would say. Third would be high.
Who's your 2? Who's your 2 and 3?
I think my 2. I think 2 is going to be. I think Drew's going to hit 2 this year.
That's a good point.
I think that Drew is going to put it all together, and really make a charge for first. And I will say another prediction is I think Drew's going to be in the lead for a majority of the year, and I think he's going to be usurped at the end by a man that I call Austin Rabaugh. I think this is the year of Austin, personally.
You think he's going to take the whole thing?
I think Austin's going to take the championship back home to Chicago, and he's going to deserve it. Because I think that he's going to break through this sort of bad luck that he's had and really put it all together this year.
For first place, not to brag too much, I'm taking it.
Wow.
This is my return to glory.
That's what you get for being modest, Tony.
I'm taking it.
You get your co-host claiming now, as we watch week 4 of the preseason, that he is going to be the champion of this
I'm not
league.
even watching. I'm looking at your beautiful eyes. I'm ready. I'm taking it. This is my year.
What? So, okay. So what do you think? What's going to make you champ once again?
I've tasted it once.
What's going to dethrone me?
That's the thing. I've tasted it once. I know what it feels like. I want it back.
Yeah.
I want it more.
So because you know how sweet it is,
right?
You have the most the most desire for it. And
right.
As they say in sports, you want it more.
And I'm okay with you taking it in 2017. You can have it then. We can keep this between us. We'll just never let anyone else play.
I don't think there's room at the top for 2. And and the reason why I say that is because, sure, my prediction is that Austin's going to win because I'm a nice guy.
Sure.
But what I would say is that if I'm really using my brain and analyzing this league for what it is, obviously it's going to be me.
It's you.
Obviously.
Okay. So Austin, Tony has no faith in you. I'm being upfront. I have no faith in you. I'm telling you that. But Tony's he's gonna lie to you. He's gonna tell you that. Austin, you're gonna finish. I'm gonna say 4. I'm gonna give you 4.
I think that's patronizing, personally.
It ain't.
I think it's very patronizing.
You're the one that's patronizing. You told him he's gonna get first place.
I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Anyway,
who's your last? Who's gonna perform?
You know what? I'm not gonna pick last because I think
I will, Aaron.
I think picking last place is disingenuous, and
it's what the league is all about.
I think it is mean and rude. And quite honestly, I'm not sure if I would like to continue this podcast with somebody who's so negative thinking.
Coming from the man who wants quarterbacks to die so he can get more points.
I don't think that there's proof of that I ever said that.
Okay, we'll reel the tape back. We'll run it back. I think that's all we got for you guys.
I think so too.
I think that was a great start.
I think that was very productive. I think that it provides a lot of insight. I think that when this season is over, one of the first things I'm going to do is come back and listen to this.
Absolutely.
Episode. I think that
we're going to play it at the Super Bowl watch party.
Yeah, they'll love that.
Yeah.
They'll love it.
Play it over the Super Bowl. Right. No one's watching that shit.
Can we just Chromecast it and like just the image of the podcast
of our
logo?
Inevitable logo?
Like, do we really have to watch the Super Bowl? I mean, we're not. There's no fantasy during the Super Bowl, so like, do I even really care?
Exactly. That being said, here at the 3-Step Flop, my name's Gator Strand.
And I'm Tony DiLato.
We hope you all have a great day.
Peace.